America, Florida is always changing. And certainly here in Central Florida, we've seen so many people come here for the jobs, for the opportunities. You know, some are even starting to call Central Florida Puerto Rico's 79th municipality. Well, I went to Puerto Rico in September because I believe anyone who wants to be president should give attention to Puerto Rico and should remind our fellow Americans, Puerto Ricans are American citizens. That's something often overlooked or even denied. And it is one of the great ironies of our law and our history that Puerto Ricans who are citizens in Puerto Rico cannot vote for their president and commander-in-chief, but if you move to Central Florida, because you're a citizen, you can vote. And what we need to recognize is that there's much we can do if we are supporting our Puerto Rican friends. It's great that today there is a National Day of Action for Puerto Rico happening on Capitol Hill. We have to find a long-term solution to the economic and healthcare challenges facing Puerto Rico. And everyone here with ties to the island, you have to help us be part of the solution. Your engagement and support will really matter.
Jake Huger here with you guys today. We've got a big show for you guys. I think my bandage is looking slightly better than it did last show. So for those of you who are still wondering, because you missed some of the shows from earlier in the week, I got 4 stitches across the nose. That's why I got the bandage. And the stitches are out. They're out. Hopefully the face will be only slightly improved soon. Okay. So now we got a big show ahead for you guys. And obviously a lot of it is about San Bernardino and what happened there. So there are a lot of angles here: gun control, terrorism, etc. So let's get to it. Let's jump right into the show here. So a lot of people are wondering who did the shootings in San Bernardino. Now it's a very, very fair question, because as we were doing the show live yesterday, we didn't know yet, and we had no names, we had no motive, and it looked like a workplace shooting. Now, oftentimes when radical Muslims do shootings or bombings, they do it in a very prominent place: Paris, New York, Washington. San Bernardino, at a place where they have disabled kids, seems so random. And there was an initial report out about how there was a fight at a holiday party, and then somebody left and then came back with weapons. Okay, so that's why people were unsure yesterday. Today, we're a little bit more sure. Not a little bit, a lot more sure. So here are your new clues as to why they might have done this. First of all, we have the 2 suspects. Yesterday we thought it was 3, but one person who had run from the building, probably understandably so, was detained and then released. They did not have anything to do with this. There were only 2 suspects, and they're a couple: Saeed Rizwan Farouk and Tashfeen Malik. So they're Muslim. Does that give you a clue? Of course it does, right? So now that is not the only clue and not the only factor. So if it had turned out that they were angry about something at work, and then they went, in the unfortunate words of going postal, they'd done that. That's entirely possible. We've had Asians do that in Virginia Tech. We've had, races of different sorts do that, and ethnicities and backgrounds. But that is not the case here. So first of all, this was enormously well planned. Not that in that it was carried out with any kind of precision, but that they had protective gear on them. They had heavy weaponry: 2 assault rifles, 2 handguns, more than 1,600 rounds of ammunition. They wore masks. They wore tactical gear. They had 3 pipe bombs. That was a coordinated attack. There's no question about it. It's not like, hey, somebody got mad at a holiday party and they went home and got their 3 pipe bombs and their tactical gear and 1,600 rounds of ammunition. No. They had planned to do this. Right now, no one has unearthed a manifesto or anything along those lines saying why they did it, because it's still such a bizarre place to do it. Now, he worked in public health, Farouk did, which is, wow, maybe some part of what's wrong with public health. And they were having an event there, and the poor people, a lot of them got shot, also worked in public health. And obviously the most decent people in the world working there with disabled kids, right? So this guy's at a holiday party there when he wouldn't necessarily be in that building. He's at the party, according to authorities, for about 20 minutes or so. Then he goes home, comes back with his partner. They're not sure yet if it's technically his wife or his fiancée. And then they shoot up the place, right? So, given all these, and more, by the way, here, more clues, so to make it crystal clear. Now, it appears that his family's from Pakistan. He's an American citizen, born here, raised here. She was not. She was here on a visa because they were planning to get married, so that's how she came on a visa. She's from Pakistan. So he had gone back to Pakistan recently. That's not much of a clue because he's from there. But in 2013, he'd gone to Saudi Arabia. I mean, people go to Saudi Arabia, but it's a clue, given what we know now, right? And then they found, apparently, that he'd been watching ISIS propaganda on his home computer. Again, it's just a day after. Some of these details might change, but the overall picture, I would be very surprised if it changed. It looks like it was an attack from radical Muslim. Okay, so we can conclude that and move on. 14 dead and 21 injured. So when I say move on, let's be very, very clear about that, right? It's not like, okay, it happened, so let's just brush it under the rug. No, let's figure out what the issue here is and how we can help so it doesn't happen again. Because if you remember yesterday's show, I was in a rage over this, and I'm still in a rage. I'm a rage that they got all 4 of the guns legally. We're in a sea of guns, so if it was a terrorist act, then I'm going to stop saying if. It so clearly looks like a terrorist act the day after, but I'm just going to call it a terrorist act going forward. So these guys who wound up becoming terrorists, they just walk in, get all this weaponry, all this ammunition, build their pipe bombs, do whatever they were going to do, right? I'm mad at that. I'm mad at the radical Muslims and their ideology that has driven us to this. So now, how are we going to cover it? Well, New York Post chose to cover it in this way. They put up a huge headline that said, Muslim killers. Now, okay. Now, here's the issue with that, right? Now, number one, let me defend it a little bit, okay? Because everybody's wondering, were the killers, right-wing, like the Planned Parenthood killer that just, did the shooting a couple of days ago? Was it a random lunatic? Was it a workplace disagreement, or was it Muslim? So everybody's wondering that. Everybody knows that. I get that. Everybody gets that, right? So their headline is, it was Muslims. It was Muslim killers. That answers the question. So that's my defense of their headline. Now, what is the problem with their headline? It leaves you with the impression that it is Muslims in general. Okay, so I want to take this moment to be a little bit clearer about who we should be mad at, right? Now, it's not just so that we can vent and be full of rage, but it's so that we can get to a more constructive solution so that we have less of these shootings and bombings, etc. So the 3 categories I have are radical Muslims, fundamentalist Muslims, and then Muslims in general. Now, everyone agrees radical Muslims, those are the ones I define as taking violent action like these guys, are the problem. There's no question. Everybody knows we've got to eliminate that. We've got to find a way to fight against that and beat that, right? Some believe that fundamentalist Muslims are not part of the problem. There's fundamentalist Christians, which is actually at least a third of the United States of America, and there are fundamentalist Muslims. And so they believe in a stricter interpretation of the Quran, or an interpretation of the Quran that emphasizes the negative parts, as fundamentalist Christians here emphasize the negative parts, like, gays are sinners, etc., right? Fundamentalists very rarely emphasize, let's help the poor and the needy, right? It happens from time to time. Jimmy Carter was an evangelical Christian, a fundamentalist of a sort, but he took it in a very positive direction. And in Islam, I know that not a lot of Americans have a lot of contact with Muslims, so they just can't believe this. But yes, there are some fundamentalist Muslims who emphasize the positive parts and care a lot about helping the poor and the needy, right? Some people just refuse to recognize that. But overall, I'm not in the camp that says fundamentalist Muslims are not a problem. I think it is a problem, okay? Now, what we don't want to happen, and I'll come back to that in a second, is we don't want ISIS and radical Islam to gain the upper hand. This is the flowchart that they want, right? So they want people from the Muslim population going over the fundamentalist Muslims and eventually becoming radical Muslims. Now, when we do a headline like Muslim killers, well, then they get to turn around and go, you see that? They hate you, right? The West is never going to accept you. You're not really an American. You're not really French. You're not really Belgian. You're not any of these things. You're a Muslim. They know it. You know it. Come to our side. Come to our side. I don't want to help them do that. That's a really, really bad idea. I wanted to go in the opposite direction, right? Now, radical Muslims, there's nothing you can do about it anyway. They're already violent. We got to go get them, bring them to justice, etc., right? But there is, I believe, an opportunity to take fundamentalist Muslims and bring them in the opposite direction. So instead of this, wouldn't it be great if we can get some of the fundamentalists? So the X is because you're never going to help the radical Muslims. But get the fundamentalist Muslims going over to the general Muslims direction. Now, there's some who believe, oh, you're crazy, that can't happen. But I did a report on this about a week ago, telling you how fundamentalist Islam has increased greatly in the last 40, 50 years. And part of the reason for that was Saudi Arabia spreading Wahhabism. Another part of the reason for that was the U.S. decided it was a brilliant strategy to fight the communists by saying to the 1 billion Muslims in the world back then, hey, why don't you become more fundamentalist and fight the godless communists? Oops. So we supported the Mujahideen, we supported fundamentalist Muslims in Pakistan. That's part of the reason why I think fundamentalist Islam is also a problem, right? It's not just the radical Muslims, because it creates a culture from which radical Islam arises. That culture was not as toxic in Pakistan when we started this back in the 1980s, when we started giving their their intelligence agencies propaganda to spread throughout Pakistan, and then we did in Southeast Asia, and we did it in Africa as well. Oh, fight the communists, they're atheists, they're heathens, you guys are good Muslims, you should be even more Muslim, you should be more fundamentalist. That turned out to be a decent short-term strategy, especially in Afghanistan, and a horrific long-term strategy. So, if we were able to influence the culture in that way and have it head in the wrong direction, and you call me naive if you want, but I believe that we can influence the culture and have it head in the right direction. Now, every scholar says that before Wahhabism really took off in the late 19th century, so it was before the U.S. came in and did what we did because of foreign policy, that Wahhabism, Salafism already existed, but it was in the late 19th century that it really started to take off. Before that, there was about a 400-year period in which case you had Muslim empires, but they did not emphasize jihad. So the whole idea of radical Islam was not as emphasized. Now, part of the reason that it wasn't as emphasized is because they were winning. So you didn't need to do jihad if you were in charge. If you've got a giant empire and you get to pick on minorities and you get to have your way and collect tax from everybody and you're invading people, well, you don't need jihad as much. Jihad you need when you're out of power. And what am I going to do? I don't know. They got jets. I'm going to put on a suicide vest and I'm going to the ideology of jihad. Now, before it was basically an ideology of empire, because the Ottoman Empire was winning. Before that, the Arab Empire was winning within their context, right? So now, if there was a period of hundreds of years where jihad was not emphasized and radical Islam was not emphasized, is it possible that we could return to that? Yes. Okay. Is it easy? No way! No way is it easy. It's going to be a long, long stretch. Does it help to put all Muslims in the category of radical Muslims or even fundamentalist Muslims? No, it does not help that process. And by the way, there's a second problem with it. It's wrong. It's not true. It's not accurate. So the overwhelming majority of Muslims are like the overwhelming majority of all religious people, which is not actually that religious. So if you ask them what's in the Bible for religious Catholics, Protestants, etc., or you ask a Muslim what's in the Quran, do they know it? Nobody reads the text. Most of them, especially in the Muslim world, a lot of times the Quran is in Arabic. Southeast Asia, they don't speak Arabic. In Turkey, they don't speak Arabic. In Iran, they speak Farsi more than Arabic. And so, oftentimes, they don't even know what's in it. And if you ask them, hey, are you a Muslim that believes that the Quran is 100% right? What are people going to do? They're going to reflexively answer, yes, that's right. What, are you questioning my identity? Of course it's right. Like Christians do here. Hey, do you think Jesus Christ is the Savior? Of course I do. Okay, did you read the Bible? Do you know any of the details? Do you know that in Leviticus, even though it says you shall not lie with men, it also says you shouldn't eat shrimp? He doesn't know that. He didn't read the Bible. All he knows is what his pastor told him, right? And if he goes to church. So that general trend is also true in the Muslim world. Again, since here in America there's not a lot of exposure to the Muslim world, a lot of people just don't believe that. They think that 1.7 billion people are, not all of them, but generally a little crazed, a much more fundamentalist, and that their book is so vile and disgusting and horrible and unfixable and irredeemable that it makes the majority of Muslims, or a huge percentage of Muslims, fundamentalist by their nature, and some of them think radical by their nature. Now, that's not the case because history shows that that wasn't the case. And, I had a debate about this with one of my co-hosts in Old School, in the most recent podcast that we shot, right? And he says, well, Jesus was a good role model because he didn't have power. He was powerless on the cross. First, that was not a choice. When he's on the cross, he said, God, why have you forsaken me? He thought he was going to win, right? But okay, even if you think Jesus is a good role model, and in some ways he was. My Sermon on the Mount was terrific, right? Well, that didn't stop Christians throughout history of not using him as a good role model, but using him for the exact opposite. And people, I know they get really touchy when you mention the Nazis, but I've done it on the show with dozens of quotes from Hitler, where he's like, I'm doing this for Jesus Christ. we are Christians, we are a Christian army, we're doing this for Christianity. Now, you can say that's the wrong interpretation of the Bible. Well, the Bible's wildly hypocritical. There's a wonderful interpretation and a horrible interpretation, right? The Quran is wildly hypocritical. There is a horrible interpretation and a wonderful interpretation. It depends on the context, the politics, the time, even the geography, for which direction they're going to take it and what culture is going to grow out of that mix, okay? So, throughout history, again, there's some people online, you mention the Crusades, their heads explode. Oh my God, false equivalency, you can't say Crusades. No, we're not talking about, hey, this shooting happened and the Crusades happened hundreds of years ago, so call it even. No. The point is, could Christianity be perverted or interpreted in a way that leads you to Inquisition, Crusades, Holocaust, etc.? Well, obviously, because they did all that, and they all pretended to be, or claimed to be, great Christians, fundamentalist Christians, right? And the same battle is waging right now within Islam. People who think, hey, helping the poor, the needy, giving 10% of all of the money that you have to the poor is part of their interpretation of Islam, versus the guys who want to be radical. So, let's acknowledge those facts and realize, no, the enormous majority of Muslims are human beings. Just like the human beings in the other religion, they mainly care about their family, they merely care about money, do they have enough food on the table for their family, friends, drinking, the same old things. Now, drinking is not allowed in Islam. A lot of things are not allowed in religion that people do anyway. Okay, go to a lot of Muslim countries, see if they drink. Okay, and they do, trust me. So as you have this mix, understand what the real issue is, and then for God's sake, let's get to the right answer. And, I have a story later today about an ISIS hostage, a Frenchman, who'd been there for 10 months. He's like, stop bombing them, it's a trap, it's a trap. You're radicalizing the Muslims on the ground. They're not, all of them are not radical. Yet when ISIS first came into Syria, into places like Raqqa, almost none of them were radical. But ISIS comes in with their poisonous culture, right? And then they say the West is against you, and they think you're all Muslims, and we think you're all Muslims, and we all think you should be fundamentalist and radical like us. And then the West comes by and helps ISIS by dropping bombs throughout the civilian population. And the civilian population goes, oh, I guess ISIS propaganda was right. The West hates us, and they view us as all the same. Well, we might as well fight them. You see, that is counterproductive. So I believe that we need a long-term strategy to make sure that we fight the culture wars, okay? And I think that fundamentalist Islam is a huge problem in the world. But when you conflate that with Muslims in general, and then you say things like, let's profile them or let's treat them differently, again, you're helping ISIS propaganda, and that leads to more shootings and more terrorist activity, not less. So, again, for the 100th time, for God's sake, for Allah's sake, for the spaghetti monster's sake, for everyone's sake, let's be smart about this and not put out headlines that are counterproductive and lead us to our worst natures and to worst results. Let's listen to our better angels and help lead in a smarter direction that leads to a more peaceful world. Now, if you don't believe in that, you think that's naive, and you think the only answer is war, well, then I can't help you. That you're not listening to the logic that is laid out, not by me, but by all the scholars who've studied this, and including the Defense Intelligence Agency that says, the bombings aren't really working. And 50 intelligence agents for the Pentagon that turned around this summer and said, hey, some of our commanding officers are saying the bombing's working. We're here to tell you that airstrikes are not working, okay? It is counterproductive. Let's be smart. Please, let's be smart. Okay. That's my plea for rationality. My guess is it will fall on a lot of deaf ears. Okay. And some, I hope, very much open-minded people that can lead us into the right direction. Okay. Now, let's go to the next part of the story. Unfortunately, there are plenty of parts. So, we just had a shooting in San Bernardino that is a terrorist act. Looks like there was two people. They looked at ISIS propaganda online. They traveled abroad, and the FBI now believes they might have been radicalized. And obviously, their actions were completely radical. Now, it's a good thing that we have a terrorist watch list. So we can put people on it. Now, we have no idea in this case whether these guys were on it or if the intelligence agencies could have figured out in time to put them on it. Right? They had traveled to Saudi Arabia. They had traveled to Pakistan. We didn't know, obviously, at the time that they had listened to ISIS propaganda. And just traveling to those countries doesn't mean that they're radicals. But if you had more clues, you might have been able to put them on that list. And then maybe they wouldn't have been able to buy the 4 guns that they used, which they bought legally. Now, the reality is, even if we had them on the terrorist watch list, they could have bought those guns anyway. Because in the insane world of the United States of America, we do not stop people on the terrorist watch list from acquiring weapons. Wait a minute, why do we even have a watch list if we're not going to stop them from buying guns and weapons? We stop them from flying on airplanes, but we refuse to stop them from buying weapons. Well, if they're dangerous enough that you don't want them on an airplane, well, then they're dangerous enough that I don't want a gun in their hand. But apparently, I'm in the minority in Washington. In the country, there's no question that we're in the overwhelming majority. Of course, Americans don't want people on the terrorist watch list to be able to buy guns. Polls indicate that very clearly. Well, luckily for us, there was very recently a bill called Denying Firearms and Explosives to Dangerous Terrorists Act. Seems like the most sensible act you've ever seen in your life. Easily lost. Lost in the Senate 45 to 54. It wasn't that close. And in the House, every Republican voted against stopping terrorists from getting guns. That seems so unbelievable that some right-wingers don't even believe it. They think, that can't be true. I'm a Republican. I don't want terrorists to have guns. Look it up. That's an act. It went down in flames, and the Republicans killed it. But you don't have to just look it up. Let's go to Paul Ryan right now. Okay, he's now the Speaker of the House. He's the one that made sure that bill lost. Hey, Paul, why'd you do that?
He said, we have a no-fly list where people can't get on planes, but these same people who we did not allow to fly could get into a store right now in the United States and buy a firearm, and there's nothing we can do to stop them.
Well, on this particular issue, we do have a constitution. Citizens have a due process rights, and anyone can just be arbitrarily placed upon the no-fly list. In fact, that's happened quite a bit. Let's make sure that we act according to citizens' rights, the Constitution. Oh, and let's make sure that what we do actually solves these problems. So that is why I think we need to take a pause and see what's happening. This is why we're working on mental health already. So with respect to the no-fly list, I think it's very important to remember people have due process rights in this country. What we're trying to do is find out the facts and make sure that what our response is actually addresses the problems without infringing upon the rights of law-abiding citizens. That's the key here, Gail.
But it keeps happening. It keeps happening.
And how long will it take? But we also have citizens who have rights to be protected. And again, Gail, one of the common themes here, this is why we're really serious about our mental health legislation.
Yes.
Okay. Now, not everybody who does shootings has mental health problems. And no, you're not serious about that legislation. You've never passed it. But anyway, about the terrorist watch list, which is what this issue is about, he says, well, sometimes people get put on there arbitrarily. Well, then that would fix that problem, right? If we're going to have a terrorist watch list, we should make sure that it's a good one and that the people on it don't get access to weaponry, right? See, but that's an excuse. Oh, sometimes mistakes happen. Yeah, mistakes happen in everything. But overall, if let's say it's 2% mistakes, that means we would stop 98% of the terrorists that are accurately on the watch list from getting weapons. Wouldn't that be a great thing? I mean, these Republicans say, we can't take any percentage chance that the Syrian refugees might turn out to be terrorists, so we can't let them into the country. But then they turn around and they go, people that are actually on the terrorist watch list should be able to buy guns. Well, if we can't take any chances with Syrian refugees, why are you taking chances with terrorist watch lists? That's the most irrational thing you could possibly say. And the reality is, of course, they just want the NRA and gun manufacturers to be able to sell more weapons. If it goes to terrorists, it scares the hell out of people, and then more people have to buy guns. That's not a loss for them. That's a win for them, and these guys work for the NRA. It's disgusting. I mean, if you're a Republican and you're in that camp, they're like, who cares about the terrorist rights, man? They don't have any rights. I'm not going to read them as civil rights. No way. I'm not going to read them their Miranda rights. Obama and the Democrats have argued for that. They're the worst. Look, so listen to what Paul Ryan just said. He's your Speaker of the House. He said he's really worried about the due process rights of the people on the terrorist watch list.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so who's concerned about terrorist rights? Well, if you want to give him credit for that, apparently the Republicans are, right? So he's not alone. Here's Carly Fiorina. She's running for president. Almost all the presidential candidates on the Republican side, by the way, are in favor of the people on the terrorist watch list being able to buy guns. Go ask them. They're on the record. Here she is on the Morning Joe.
Well, it is an unspeakable tragedy, and despite the headline in the Daily News, the first thing I did was say a prayer. And say a prayer for those who've been murdered, say a prayer for their families, say a prayer for those who are trying to recover, and say a prayer especially as well for our first responders.
Yeah. Please save me your prayers, okay? Those 14 people are already dead. 21 more shot, okay? What we need to do is stop people from getting weapons in the first place to do heinous acts like this. Praying is just a way of saying, I don't want to do anything. Oh, okay, I pray for their families after they're already killed. That's not cute. So here's her point on the terrorist watch list.
The left wing, every time, in a knee-jerk reaction to say the answer here is more laws, when we're not enforcing the laws we have. Let's start by enforcing the laws we have.
But wouldn't it be common sense to have people who are on terror watch lists not be allowed to buy? I mean, there are common sense things that we can do.
Yes,
but
that's kind of a red herring, honestly. If somebody is a suspected terrorist on a watch list, they can be indicted at any time. And once you're indicted, you cannot own a firearm. Well, you know, my best friend's husband was on the watch list for years. It was a complete mistake. He also happened to be a gun owner. If I had utter faith in the competence of government, I might agree with that. But do you? I don't. The government screws up all the time. They screw up who they put on watch lists. They screw up, my goodness. There are litanies of things that the government makes mistakes on.
Litanies of things the government makes mistakes on. So, since the government, sometimes when they're trying people for murder, makes mistakes, I guess we shouldn't have murder trials. But wait, we should have murder trials even though they make mistakes. And when they make a mistake, somebody might wind up on death row. Now, in fact, that's an argument the death penalty opponents use to say, hey, government makes mistakes all the time. We don't want to making the final mistake and it costing somebody their life when it turns out they were innocent. In fact, we have dozens of examples of people that were on death row who were exonerated. And right-wingers like Carly Fiorina said, who cares about those mistakes? Murder them anyway. Who cares? Death penalty. Give them death penalty. Government makes mistakes. So what? Kill them, right? And then she turns around and goes, I knew a Bob down the street. He was on the terrorist watch list, really. Hey, government makes some percentage of mistakes, so let's let all of the people on the terrorist watch list have weapons. Okay, now, how many people are those, by the way? More than 2,000 suspects on the FBI's terrorist watch list bought weapons in the U.S. over the last 11 years, according to the Federal Government Accountability Office. Can you imagine anything more helpful to the terrorists than fighting for their rights to own weapons inside the United States? That is exactly what the Republican Party is doing. And then they use excuses like, 2% of the list might be wrong, the list might be slightly off, and wait, we could get them in other ways, maybe, possibly. So the 98% that are on there rightfully, let them buy weapons anyway. Cha-ching! My donors at the NRA are very happy about the terrorists buying weapons. You people are grotesque. So if you hate terrorists, as any right-thinking person should, you should hate what the Republicans are doing in allowing them to buy weapons inside the United States. And, by the way, some of that will seem very rational to people, and there will be people who say, no, it's not an amendment! It's not an amendment! The terrorists have rights! Terrorists have rights. Wait, did I say that out loud? Oh, yeah, I did. Oh, well, wait, I thought I was a right-winger. Yeah, what happened? All of a sudden, God, their propaganda, man, it brainwashes people. And then they really start arguing for terrorist rights. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Okay, all right, let's go forward. We say, hey, if someone is arrested, don't, an American citizen, right? Don't assume, like, especially if they're not arrested, if they're profiled, whatever, don't assume about American citizens that they're guilty, right? And don't strip away their rights if they're American citizens. They say, even if we think they are, not profiled, not like general, vague, that portion of the population. No, we took care, we have evidence, that's why we put them on the terrorist watch list. We're worried that they're terrorists, we won't let them fly on a plane. And they go, yeah, those guys that we're really worried about, give them guns. Logic-free zone. Okay. All right, we move forward. The mass shootings in this country are, well, as you know, completely and utterly out of control. We just had one in a Planned Parenthood last Friday, and we just had another one yesterday in San Bernardino. In that case, 14 people killed and 21 injured. Now, whether it was a Muslim fundamentalist who did it in San Bernardino, as it looks like it was, and a Christian fundamentalist who did it in the Planned Parenthood shooting, as it looks like it was, or it's just a random crazy guy in Virginia Tech or Aurora, Colorado, or Sandy Hook, you name it. They all have access to weaponry, and the shootings keep on going. Did you know that yesterday, as San Bernardino shooting was happening, there was another mass shooting in Savannah, Georgia? So there's two different definitions that people use for mass shooting. The FBI used the definition of 4 people killed in a shooting, then they call that a mass shooting. The other accepted definition is 4 people shot. So in the Savannah, Georgia one, it was 4 people that were shot, 3 injured, and 1 killed, right? That was such little news, even though their local news didn't cover it that much. Only one of the local TV stations covered it. Oh, mass shooting, 4 people shot? That's so normal in Savannah, Georgia, that the local stations in Savannah don't even cover it. That's how grotesque this situation has become in America, right? So, by the way, since the Planned Parenthood shooting, there's been 3 mass shootings. In fact, let's use the FBI definition. Let's use the second definition first, which is 4 people shot, not 4 people killed. 4 people shot, but if you count that way, in the 336 days of 2015 so far, there have been 355 shootings, mass shootings. So there are more mass shootings than the number of days in 2015, more than 1 a day in the country. Again, 4 people shot in one shooting at least is considered a mass shooting for that index. More than 1 a day. It's crazy. The rest of the world doesn't live this way. Do you know that in Germany, the white people in this country, so put aside race, right? You know, the blacks and Latinos are shot disproportionately by cops in this country than white Americans. But eliminate blacks and Latinos. Just look at white Americans. They're shot by our cops at 26 times the rate of Germans. So now, why are the cops in that case doing the shooting? Because the cops are also worried that everybody's got guns. So there's a number of reasons why the cops do the shooting, but one of them is they're like, I don't know, man, there's 250 million guns. I assume every person has a gun. So that's part of the reason that they shoot unarmed people, armed people, etc. Even for white people in this country, they're getting shot by cops at 26 times the rate of in Germany, let alone the criminals who are doing the mass shootings. Okay. Now, if you take the FBI definition, is the number dramatically lower? That's 4 people shot and killed, qualifying as a mass shooting. It is lower, but not very low. 209 shootings out of the 336 days of this year alone. 209 shootings where 4 people were murdered, let alone the numbers injured in this year. It's unbelievable. So in 2015, how many people shot and killed in mass shootings so far? 462 people have been killed and 1,314 wounded. Now, some of those were terrorist acts like the one in San Bernardino, right? But most of them were not. So what is the real danger in America? Some of it is terrorism, right? But overall, the biggest danger is mass shootings. One mass shooting after another, literally. And now there's the issue of the non-mass shootings, which are even greater. So let's go to Ted Alcorn there. He's a research director at Everytown for Gun Safety. So they're in favor of some gun control. He says you have 14 people dead in California, referring to the San Bernardino shooting, and that's a horrible tragedy. But likely, according to the statistics, 88 other people died today from gun violence in the United States. He said that yesterday. 88 other people on top of the 14 killed. Shootings on top of shootings on top of shootings. There is no end to it here in the United States. The answer is gun control. So, look, I know that some Second Amendment advocates can't read, and so they only read half of the Second Amendment. But if you read the full Second Amendment, it says a very important clause about a well-regulated militia. We don't have well-regulated militias. That has nothing to do with what's going on in this country. Instead, we have unregulated mass shooters. So, for all of our health, safety, and lives, for our families' lives. So this isn't a random terrorist bombing in New York or Paris or even in the shooting in San Bernardino. The mass shooters are everywhere. They're in Colorado, they're in Florida, they're in Connecticut, they're in California, they're everywhere. When are we going to do something about this? And again, I ask you the question, how many would it take? If one mass shooting a day doesn't do it, what will do it? Would 2 mass shootings a day on average get us to change our mind about gun control? Would, right now, over 100 people die from shootings every day in America? Would, if the number is 200 or 500, would it make a difference? Or is there no amount of killings that will get us to say, hey, you know what? Maybe the politicians doing the NRA's bidding because they're taking their money is not a good way to run our democracy. Maybe we should find a way to have those politicians represent us, be our representatives, instead of the representatives of their donors. Because 93% of Americans want federal background checks. It is the simplest, the most tame legislation you could have. And even that is defeated in the House and the Senate, because it's a wholly owned subsidiary of the NRA. How many of our neighbors, our family, and friends have to get killed before we say enough is enough? Okay, we can't have this anymore from the NRA. I don't know what it's going to take to convince politicians. And the reality is nothing. The only thing that'll convince politicians is cold, hard cash. They don't care about cold, dead bodies. Okay, they just care about the cash. So that's why I keep telling you about Wolfpack. Because the only way to solve the problem is to make sure that the money isn't flowing into politics. Otherwise, all you're going to have is a system full of people who are bribed for a living. And people who are bribed don't care about the citizens. They care about the people who gave them the bribe. In this case, it's gun manufacturers. Wake up, America. Wolf-pack.com. You got to join us. We got to fix this. Okay. Now, one more gun story for this segment. Oh my God, I have taken a long time. Well, it is important. Okay. Now, this is on the same topic we were just discussing. So, Daily News ran what some consider a controversial headline. I don't consider it controversial at all. As you see there, it says, God isn't fixing this, and it refers to all the shootings that have happened, including the last one in California, 14 dead, 21 injured, and it has all these tweets from Republican politicians saying, oh, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and the families. And their title is indisputable. God isn't fixing it. So you keep praying after every shooting, and there's another shooting right afterwards. In fact, there's a mass shooting every single day in America. On average, this year in 2015, more than one mass shooting per day. So, obviously, your prayers aren't working. So, that's not an actual legislative solution. You guys are politicians, you're representatives, you're supposed to represent us, and you're supposed to come up with solutions. Why don't you? Because you're all bought whores. You are. That's what the system we've created. It's not because they're bad people. I know you can make that case, right? But we've built a system where 95% of the time, if you have more money than your opponent, you're going to win. Where do you get the money? You get it from private interest. You don't get it from the American taxpayer so that you're beholden to the American taxpayer. No. You get the money you're going to use to win your elections from billionaires and from manufacturers of all different sorts, like Lockheed Martin and the defense contractors who profit to the tune of billions of dollars when we have a war. Oil companies that profit to the tune of billions of dollars when we have more wars. Gee, look at that, we have more wars. I couldn't have seen that coming. No, I could. And in this case, it's the gun manufacturers. They pour in money to the politicians, and the politicians go, oh, 93% of you want federal background checks? I don't work for you. I work for the people who sign my checks. And then I'll pretend that my thoughts and prayers are with you. In fact, my thoughts are with my donors. And my prayer is that I get more donors. One of the guys who pointed that out was Igor Volsky from Think Progress. Yesterday, as the shootings were happening, he started tweeting out facts. He said, got $4,000 from the NRA during the 2014 election cycle to address gun violence by praying. Representative Steve Womack included his tweet saying praying for San Bernardino. In other words, Volsky's pointing out yeah, your prayers aren't doing anything. What you're actually voting based on is not the prayers, but the $4,000 you got from the NRA. And then he called out Representative Renee Elmers, who got $2,000 from the NRA during the 2014 election cycle, also with the thoughts and prayers. And he did this to many, many politicians, 1,000 here, 1,500 there, 3,000 there, over and over again. He was tweeting all day long. And then this one was a doozy. NRA dumped $922,000 into Mitch McConnell's reelection bid. So when it comes to preventing gun violence, all you get is this tweet. And that's what McConnell did. He actively fought against legislation, for example, that would make sure that terrorists on the terrorist watch list don't get weapons. He actively fought against legislation that would require federal background checks, so we know that lunatics aren't getting weapons. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. Let them all have weapons. Let them have armor-piercing bullets. Let them have as powerful a weapon as they can get their hands on. The weapon that the NRA uses is cold hard cash, and that's what they bought McConnell with. And that's why all these guys are prostitutes. That's what I mean. What do you call somebody who works for money and sells out their morals and principles? I feel bad because a lot of sex workers are just doing a transaction that doesn't hurt anybody else. When McConnell and his cohorts whore themselves out, it hurts the rest of us. So you want to get screwed over by the NRA and you want to do your shenanigans with them? Have at it, Hoss. That isn't my business. But when you say, hey, NRA, I'll take your money, I'll take your bribe, and then I'll screw over my constituents, and then there'll be mass shootings in Kentucky and California and all these other places, what do I care? They're dead, I'm not dead. I've got great protection in the United States Congress. Okay, how much did the NRA spend overall? Listen to this tweet. NRA spent $30,650,008 in independent expenditures during the 2014 election cycle. $30 million buys you a lot of whores. And that's what they are. You got to call it like it is, okay? And again, I feel bad for the hooking community to compare them to these seedy politicians who get us killed with their blood money. So, by the way, one of those politicians came out on Morning Joe. We showed it earlier in the program, Carly Fiorina, and said, oh my God, yeah, the terrorist watch list. Well, the government makes mistakes, so even if a couple of people on that list are innocent, no. We should still let all of the people on the terrorist watch list get weapons. Now, why might she have said that? Oh, look at this. Carly Fiorina received $10,500 from gun rights groups so far. In fact, let's look at the list of the highest recipients in the 2016 cycle. Again, 2014 cycle, they spent $30 million. They're just getting warmed up so far in the 2016 cycle, and here it is. He also tweeted that out. Look at that. Look at all the leading Republicans on that list. Ben Carson, number 1. Ted Cruz, number 2. Paul Rand, number 3. All people saying no gun legislation. None whatsoever. They're all Republicans for the top 10. And, of course, number 10 on there is Carly Fiorina. So you've got at least 4 presidential contenders on the Republican side that are on that list going, yes, NRA, gimme. Give me more money. More Americans die, who cares? I'll pretend to be against terrorists. I'll pretend to be a tough guy and protect you. I'll do fear-mongering and say you'll be safe with me. But in reality, I get paid by the guys who make money by selling the weapons that murder you. Nice little trick you have there. But you know what? We're on to it. And we all know what you're doing. So stop listening to these legislators. We gotta get gun control. We gotta get it right now. We'll be right back. All right, we got some great tweets for you guys at hashtag TYT Live. Liquider3 says, I think we should give more good guy Muslim guns. Good guy Muslims with guns stop bad guy Muslims with guns, right? Oh, I love that tweet. See, apparently that only relates to white people. Would anyone in the country really be like, hey, yeah, you know what? The answer is more good guys Muslims with guns. So let's go to Dearborn, Michigan and start handing out guns. If you got guys like that, I'd like to see them. Okay, right-wingers who believe that, let me see them. Max Richards says, Cenk explained the Middle East again. Great and much-needed service. Thank you, Max. Appreciate that. Brandon Neal says, shit like this is why I donated to Wolfpack today. Nearly every problem in the nation can be drilled down to money and politics. Absolutely right. By the way, they screwed something up, though. Their Achilles heel is they allow for all money in politics, including our money. So we could pool our money together, and combined, we're much stronger than they are. Okay, especially because this is the only issue we care about. They got to go and bribe politicians on a bunch of different issues. Okay, whereas we can take all our money and focus it on this one issue. And we're not going to do it by bribing politicians. We're going to do it by hiring more of our volunteers and going out there and kicking some ass. And we've already got our legislation passed in 4 states when they told us it was impossible, and we got more to go. So wolf-pack.com, man. Come join us. Feel the power. All right, now Hector Madrigal writes in, we're talking about due process rights? So Paul Ryan is for closing down Guantanamo Bay, right? Another great point. The guys on the terrorist watch list, I mean, they've got due process rights. Guys on Guantanamo, no due process rights. But those guys, we don't even know if they're terrorists or not. We just shove them in there because people are getting $5,000 a guy to turn them in Afghanistan. Don't do due process rights. Just keep them in prison for over a decade and torture some of them. On a terrorist watch, just give them a gun. Give them weapons. Unbelievable. Okay. And Rob writes in, God must be a cheap bastard if he can't outbribe the NRA. All these thoughts and prayers, yet God apparently is not as strong as the NRA. How mighty is that God after all? It's a fair question. All right, now, let's go to, we talked about terrorism, let's go talk about ISIS a little bit. There's a powerful story of a French hostage who was kept by ISIS for 10 months. His name is Nicholas Hanin, and now he's back in Europe, and he had a powerful story to tell, and he told it through the Syria campaign. And it was really interesting for me to see. I think it's going to be interesting for you guys to see. It was a harrowing experience as he was held hostage all that time, and there were other hostages with him, and it didn't end well in that case. He explained, Mohammed Mwazi was one of my captors. He's the one who murdered my friends. I can't prevent myself from thinking for the 6 murders that he committed. Face to camera, murders of Westerners. How many Syrians did he kill? And who cares for them, right? So obviously this guy's got all the right in the world to be upset. Not only was he held hostage for that long, but he saw 6 of his friends murdered brutally by ISIS. He said, the jihadis lived in a parallel world, in a different matrix. They believed in a mad prophecy that there would be a global confrontation between a coalition of 80 armies against an army of Muslims coming from all over the world, and were, quote, a bit out of their mind. Okay, so that makes sense. And it is true, they have this vision of this prophecy. Now, not all Muslims agree. They fight against Shia Muslims. Shia Muslims have a different prophecy. And then most Muslims don't believe in either one of those prophecies. They might be Sunni, but they don't believe in the 80 nations coming together to fight, etc. Everybody's got a different interpretation of the text. But this is a very, very, very dangerous one, right? So, what shall we do then? You would think that this is when most right-wingers, and unfortunately in this country now it's not even right-wingers, it's even reporters like Jim Acosta at CNN yelling at the president, we got the greatest military in the world, why don't we go take out the bastards, right? Now, they are bastards. Look at what they did to these hostages, right? But the question is, how do we defeat them? And that's where this French hostage makes a really interesting point. He says, strikes on ISIS are a trap. The winner of this war will not be the parties that have the newest, most expensive, most sophisticated weaponry, but the party that manages to have the people on its side. So here's a guy who was on the ground, who was right there with them, and he's saying, you think you're hurting them with the bombing, but you're not. You're helping their cause. It helps them say two things. See, we told you that 80 countries would come against us. That's why they're attacking madly. Russia, France. Now, UK just joined the war. US, they're attacking all of us because it's part of their prophecy. And then they get to say when there's a counterattack, look at all the bombs the Russians and the Americans just dropped on you. See, they hate you. Come join our side. They view you as all the same, all Muslims, right? Yes, that's true. We're all Muslims, ISIS says. Come join us in our version of Islam, right? So here's more from Hanin. He says, at the moment, with the bombings, we are more likely pushing the people into the hands of ISIS. What we have to do, and this is really key, we have to engage the local people. This is an argument that we've seen from other smart people, scholars in the area. They say, look, you kill people with the bombings, even if you have the right people, well, new people will sprout up, and they have the same ideas. The problem isn't killing the people, it's killing the idea. Now, that's much harder to do, but it's what we must do. We can't just say, oh, it's hard, so let's not do it. Let's just do the stupid thing that's counterproductive and creates more terrorists, more people fighting against us. And here's a guy who's held hostage by ISIS for 10 months saying, don't do that, don't do that, you're helping ISIS, it's a trap. So here's more. He says, why are we making so many mistakes? Why are people so much misunderstanding the region? We're just fueling our enemies, fueling the misery, the disaster for the local people. And he said the summer refugee crisis had been a propaganda blow to ISIS. Images of refugees fleeing the Muslim quote-unquote dreamland and being welcomed in the lands of the unbelievers had given a lie to their message of Western hatred towards Muslims. And he explains, well, so as they saw people fleeing from their so-called dreamland, they were in a panic. Part of the reason why they attack so aggressively, so that they can get us to make the mistake of closing off our walls and saying, see, we're going to keep, even the people running from ISIS, the Syrian refugees who are desperate to get away from these maniacs, we're going to reject them. And we're going to say, you're all the same. And then ISIS goes, yes, we told you we were all the same. Now come back, and instead of trying to flee to the West, fight the West. Don't help them! Don't help them! One last quote here from Hanin. He says, and that is why they probably try to manipulate the public during the Paris attack, to make us close our borders, and maybe even more importantly, to close our minds. Please listen to this man who spent an unfortunate amount of time with ISIS and saw his friends being beheaded. He's telling you, don't help ISIS. The airstrikes help them. Refusing Syrian refugees help their cause, help their mad prophecy. Don't do that. It's a trap. So the more the modern world accepts people who are, yes, Muslim, yes, Syrian refugees, but ones that are running from ISIS because they hate ISIS, because they're in fear for their life from ISIS, those are the guys we have to accept so that we can defeat ISIS. I know for people who like black and white solutions and easy answers, it seems counterintuitive to them. No, me see bad people come from that land. Me hate all of them. But here's a guy whose life was in danger, who saw his friends' lives being taken, saying, no, please, you've got to be smarter than that. You've got to be more sophisticated than that. It is not a black and white world. There are different kinds of Muslims. We got to reach out to those local people and get them on our side. Don't drive them to ISIS's side. It's an obvious trap. Please don't fall for it. Okay, last story for you guys for today, because apparently I like to talk too much. Okay, now, after all these problems, I finally get to the solution for you guys. Okay. Now, one group that fights against money in politics is Wolfpack. Another one is Americans Take Action. Now, this is a group that believes in public finance. They believe in voting rights overall. It's a crazy thing. They think that all Americans should get to vote, and they should have free and fair elections where they get to decide their own fate instead of having private donors decide their fate for them. So, in California, one of the most progressive states in the country, you know that for almost 3 decades, public funding of elections has been banned. Now, the way that they did that was, as usual, more trickery. About 28 years ago, they did a couple of confusing ballot initiatives at the same time to trick people into voting against public financing, even though that's what they wanted to vote for. That's why the ballot initiatives sometimes drive me crazy in California. Now, for 3 decades, so many of the progressive groups, unfortunately, in Washington didn't know anything about this. Here is a giant state that leads the country. It is the most populous state and creates trends. Why don't you try to reverse that and bring public financing to California? We'll get to it. We'll get to it. Dude, it's been 3 decades. It's been 28 years. It doesn't look like you're getting to it. So Americans Take Action decided to take action. That's why I love these groups. See, now there's a progressive group that isn't sitting on their hands and saying, wait, hold your powder dry. No, we got powder? Let's use it, okay? So, if you live in California and you don't want billionaires to donate to the politicians, you don't want corporations buying the politicians, well, then the answer is obvious, public financing. If you write their checks, they work for you. If Sheldon Adelson or the Koch brothers or even Soros or Bloomberg writes their checks, then they work for them. Okay, so let's fix it. Now, the thing is, in California, for the nation, it's Wolfpack, right? You got to get money out of politics completely. In California, though, you can have a real significant effect right now. You pass a ballot initiative, that's how it works in California. Boom, you have public financing, and you fix it for your own state. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Let's do it in California, and then let's do it in other states. But if you live in California, it's called the California Free Act, and we can get it on the ballot initiative. Just us working together. Free stands for fair reform for equality in elections. Only the most reasonable thing in the world. So if you live in California, what are you going to do? It's going to take you about 60 seconds, okay? Democracy in 60 seconds. You're going to go to savedemocracy.org. Okay, savedemocracy.org. We'll have the link down below on YouTube. And 3 simple steps. You go there, then you print the petition form. On that page, you'll see the petition form. And you mail it to the P.O. Box right there on the website. So you'll see the P.O. Box on the website. You put it on the envelope. You take the thing you printed, put it in. Easiest thing in the world. If you're in California, you've got to do this. You got to have at least 1 minute for democracy. You have that, don't you? Right? Now, here's how we're going to win. Normally, ballot initiatives get funded by rich people. In fact, as Americans Take Action is fighting for this, they keep getting asked by other political groups, both on the left and the right, who's funding this? Who's behind this? Nobody's funding it. Nobody's behind it. Okay. The people of California are behind it. They're like, oh yeah, I don't believe that. You guys, you just got started, but you kind of have a lot of signatures already. So who's the big money behind it? No, the point is not to have big money behind it. The point is to have you guys behind it. Okay. So if you collect 500,000 signatures, and that's not an easy task, and you got to do it by the beginning of March in California. That's why if you live in California, do it right now. If you know anyone who lives in California, tell them to do it right now. If you live in California, you already did it. Get your family and your friends to do it. Just tell them, hey, you know what? You're going to take 1 minute out here, and you're going to help save democracy in California. Isn't that minute worth it? It absolutely is. And I want to see the look on their face when this group, look, here they are. They just got started. So that's it's not all of them. That's just one particular event that they were at. Now, when the big money people see this, they go, oh, those aren't even leftists. Those are average American citizens. And they can't win. This ballot initiative has no chance. Yes, we'll get to keep bribing all the politicians. Oh, I want to wipe that smile off their face. I want to get regular people like these guys. If you want to volunteer, you can volunteer on the site, too. When you go to savedemocracy.org, right up top, it tells you how to volunteer, right? But do the petition first. And join these guys. They're right. They're not lobbyists. They're not paid professionals. They're just citizens who have had enough. So if you live in California, savedemocracy.org. Do it right now. You know anybody that lives in California. Go have them sign the petition. Man, if we get that on the ballot initiative, we get public financing in California, that is a game changer. And then all those groups who've been waiting around like, oh, we thought if we waited 4 decades, then maybe it'd have its own. No. You know how you get things to work? You know how you win? By fighting right now. So come join us. Do this right now. SaveDemocracy.org. Go! I'm done. I'll be back.
We talk about TYT Army being so strong. Usually they help us run our show. Now they're going to help us run the country.
Like this.
It's time that we reclaim democracy for the people.
We had a huge victory for Wolfpack.
When Lincoln said this was a country by, of, and for, he said of the people, not of corporations.
Our representatives don't represent us. Whoa! Democracy!
United!
We are!
We are!
Too strong! There's thousands of volunteers, and you can be among them.
With Wolfpack, the mission is so clear.
Money is killing our democracy. 96% of Americans want it. When you get the power back, oh, that feels good. This is just the beginning. Let's go get them, man. Up and at them. Knock, knock. We're coming for them! Wolf-pack.com.
Mayweather will knock out Pacquiao. Floyd beats his wife.
Damn it, they failed us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong. Because you should be angry. Young Turks.
It was genuine. He was bad.
Jake Uger, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, hit up. I just remember thinking, what is this guy's name?
Jake the Turk Uger.
I think a TV station there says.
The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It's right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little rinky-dink website is speaking truth to power. We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America. We're the largest online news show in the world. We're celebrating our 1 billionth view. We're coming.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment. And Phil and host beat CNN and Headline News combined. At some point, they want to give me a show. Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a hard lesson. Shut up. If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can, quote, support him. He says to me, you won't believe the meeting that I just had. The head of MSNBC talked to me. They want him off the air. Cenk took an incredible risk. And we're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it?
I wouldn't have done what he did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, I'm going to be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close. Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing an actual show. I guarantee it. Anna's finally here. We've been waiting on her this whole time, and she's one of the promos that we shot.
I just want to let you guys know that the second hour does not start at 4 Pacific time. It starts at 4:30.
Okay,
We're starting
calm down. It's 4:20.
It's the official time.
It's 4:20.
The official time is
4:20. Okay. Oh, it's 4:20. Interesting. Time
I
for
wish it was really 4:20. You know what I mean?
I think people do know what you mean. Okay. All right. John Amento writes in, Jank, you do talk too much.
Thank you. Thank you.
But that's why I'm a TYT member, dude. Okay, and that was a bit of a setup. You fell right into it. It's a trap. Remember Admiral Akbar. Okay, Kyle writes in, when I was deployed to the Afghan-Pakistani border, my platoon tried to win hearts and minds. We only had one enemy attack. Is that amazing? That's amazing. Okay, Kyle, free T-shirt, go. For avoiding attacks, for coming back safe, and for being smart and doing the right thing. God bless you, Kyle. God bless. Okay. Finally, Jeremy, who?
Nailed it.
Yeah, awesome. Jeremy Warner writes in, if our enemies are monsters, the last thing we should do is to dehumanize everyone around them. Good free T-shirt for Jeremy Warner. Okay. Sometimes I get in the mood.
I feel like Jeremy Varner is the type of guy who already has a TYT T-shirt. We should give him more. I'm just saying.
Hey, man. More the merrier, man. Wear your colors, man. Wear your colors. You got a Wolfpack T-shirt, you got a TYT T-shirt, wear them out. God knows I do. You'll make friends. People come up, they're like, oh, I like that show. So, anyways, members of the day. Itzel Perez is member number 1820, and Paul Redahoff is member number 882. Paul and Itzel, you guys are awesome. We love you. And we'll talk to you in the post-game about wonderful nonsense.
Yeah.
All right, forward.
All right. Several more women have accused porn actor James Dean of sexual assault since the last time we reported on this story, and I wanted to give you guys the update. Now, before I get into the details, it's important to just put out there that he hasn't been charged of anything yet. It's unclear whether he will be charged of anything in the future, and a number of media companies that he's had partnerships with have severed ties with him. With that said, let me give you the details of the new accusations. Now, this all started when his ex-girlfriend, Stoya, tweeted about how he allegedly raped her. She tweeted about it and let people know, it's kind of sickening that people are applauding this guy when he raped me as a feminist. Now, I'm paraphrasing, but that was essentially what she said.
So, because some people think that he's a feminist.
Yes.
And so pretending to be a feminist and then doing the rape. But although, I don't know that he does pretend to be a feminist. That might be just something that was kind of put on him.
Right. Well, he talks about how he believes in women's rights and consent and all of that. So people have kind of given him that feminist title.
Yeah.
He's never really taken it on himself. But let me give you the details. So he's been accused of sexual assault by 3 additional women as of Wednesday. A few days earlier, 4 women had accused Dean of sexually assaulting them, allegations he firmly denied. On Wednesday, porn stars Amber Rain and Cora Peters came forward, telling the Daily Beast that they too had been sexually assaulted by Dean. Rain said Dean punched her in the face twice as the two were shooting a sex scene for a film, though she added that the two are friends today. Now keep in mind, like these 2 recent allegations include him abusing the women during the shoot. With other people around, which I found really interesting. Peter said Dean choked her, slammed her face into a couch, and anally raped her during a shoot for which she had not consented to anal sex. Peter said Dean was congratulated by the crew after the alleged assault. Later that day, porn actresses Joanna Angel alleged years of physical and sexual abuse by Dean during their 2005 to 2011 relationship in an interview on Jason Ellis's Sirius XM radio show.
So this was, look, if these charges are true, it's a no-brainer and obvious, right? Okay. But I get that people are confused by it, because did that camera crew really applaud him thinking, hey, he just raped her, that's fantastic? Or did they think that she had consented? They didn't know she hadn't consented. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it's not like there aren't anal scenes in porn. There are, right? Now, the crew probably has no idea that she hadn't consented to one. Do you see what I'm saying? So that framing is a little off. And then some of these movies are rough. So then where's the line from what they consented to and not? And maybe that line is super clear between the actors, the directors, the producers, but not clear to the crew. Right? So it's not like, hey, they're all being monsters as they watch this poor woman get raped on camera. And maybe his claim will be like, I didn't know where the line was either. I thought I had consent.
So so a few things. There's so many things going through my mind right now. First of all, I think that it's telling that so many women are coming forward now. And it's kind of like the Bill Cosby effect, where some women come forward, they finally feel, enough courage to come forward and talk about their stories. And then other women who might have been a lot more afraid to come forward or go public with their stories now feel like they can stand in solidarity and share their stories as well. I feel like there's a little bit of that going on. I don't know whether or not these allegations are true, but I find it hard to believe that so many women are going to come forward with similar accusations. Okay, so there's that. Also, when it comes to the crew, I read her account of what happened, and with the way that she spoke about it seemed as though the crew did know, okay, or at least she feels that they knew. Now, that said, I can totally understand your perspective, because when it comes to certain porn scenes, I mean, they're purposely shot to be very rough. I mean, he worked for kink.com, which is known for BDSM and that, very rough type of sex. They've severed ties with him since all these allegations came out. But you watch some of those scenes, and they're brutal. And they're brutal usually with the actors and actresses consenting to it. So I don't know. Maybe the crew was confused. Maybe they thought that was part of the deal. Yeah. But this is something that should be looked into and investigated at the very least.
So, I think the context is very, very important here. Let's give his denial first, of course. He tweets out, I respect women and I know and respect limits both professionally and privately. So that's his take on it, right? Now, the context here is the one that you outlined. Not just this, a lot of women going forward, but even people from the industry saying, outside the industry, you might not have known this, but we knew it, right? And the company had cut off ties with him, and I believe it's called Trenchcoat X. Right?
No, Trenchcoat has not cut off ties with him. So let me give you the details of that.
Okay.
So there are a number of companies, including the Frisky, which had a column featuring Dean, cut ties with him. Kink.com, a BDSM website, cut ties with him. Evil Angel, same situation. However, I thought this was really interesting. Trenchcoat X is actually a website that's run by Stoya, the woman who dated him and came out with the original allegations against him. Now, they have not cut off ties with him because he's featured in many videos with Stoya on that website, and they're making money off of those websites or those videos.
Yeah, now, but let me be clear about that. They said we're not doing anything with him going forward.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're not taking down the old videos. It also features the person who was abused and who makes money off of the videos that did not involve abuse, right? So that's a practice that you can question, right? But the person who is the victim in that case apparently is on the side of keeping the videos up. So it's complicated. It's complicated. But they did say this. I thought this kind of convinced me. They said the fact is this news about James is news to the public, but not news to us. We took this into consideration back when we were building the site. While we made the decision back then not to hire him going forward, we can't undo the fact that he is featured in some of the scenes that Stoya directed during their relationship. So, meaning we've known about his proclivities of apparently roughing people up and then doing things without consent for a while. Now, again, they're related to Stoya, who is the one doing the accusing, so keep that in mind as well. So
there's a lot of I feel like it's inconceivable that if these allegations are true, that crew and producers and people behind the scenes didn't know about what was really going on. Mm-hmm. And if they knew what was going on and they chose to stay silent, well, I think there's a huge problem there, and that's a very, very weak statement considering how terrible that is.
Yeah. So look. Bottom line is, if they decide to pursue these charges, we'll find out. They'll go to court. It won't be easy to prove. And remember, when they go to prove it, it's got to be beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's not like we think he kind of did it. It's got to be we're positive that he did it. So he might have done it and not meet that standard anyway. They might not be able to convict him. But that's why we have a justice system. So they should let that work it out. In terms of holding people accountable that weren't James Dean, the camera crew and stuff, I just think it's so hard to tell. I wouldn't get into judging them because in our context it seems like, oh my God, anal rape. How could you not? But in their context, they're seeing people have anal sex every single day. How do they know which one gave consent and didn't?
Okay, well that's a context that I'm not talking about. I'm talking about the context where these people are saying, oh yeah, we knew this was going on. We had a conversation about whether or not we'd still feature his videos, but whatevs, we decided we'd feature them. I'm talking about those guys who obviously knew that there was some sort of wrongdoing, or at least they're alleging there was some wrongdoing, and they decided not to do anything about it. Now, whether or not there should be criminal charges against them, I'm not having that conversation. Am I judging them? Absolutely, I'm judging them. You're a bad person if you know that this guy is sexually assaulting the actresses, and you're deciding not to do anything about it. So, yeah, I'm going to judge you.
I hear you, but look, last thing. Trenchcoat is partly run by Stoya.
I got it. I don't care.
But to be fair to her, she came forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm glad she came forward. That's awesome. But this is something that they knew about. And I'm not talking about Stoya. I know that she made the decision to continue using his videos. And honestly, I don't agree with that decision. It's her decision to make, but I wouldn't have made that decision. The people who work with her, and they knew this was going on. These are her business partners, her friends. They know this is going on, and they decided not to do anything about it. Well, I think that's the wrong lack of action or inaction.
Okay. All right. Fascinating story. Okay. Yeah. We'll see let's see if there is justice.
All right. As many as 230,000 of our veterans are suffering from hepatitis C, but fortunately there is a cure for it, and the VA cannot provide it because it's too expensive. Now, Gilead is a pharmaceutical company that is selling hepatitis C medication for more than $1,000 per pill. And so, as a result, the VA just can't afford it, simply can't afford it. The drug is sold as Sovaldi and claims to cure up to 99% of hepatitis C patients. The retail price for a 12-week treatment is $84,000. The Department of Veterans Affairs gets 50% discount on this, but it's still not enough. They still cannot provide it to our vets, and so veterans are dying from hepatitis C, even though there is a cure out there. Interesting that all those pro-life Republicans that are so concerned about abortion and very concerned about supporting our troops don't give a shit about stories like this. Now, the cure was invented under the leadership of a celebrated doctor in the Department of Veteran Affairs, but at $1,000 a pill, even the VA can't afford to save the lives of veterans who need it. In a 2013 trade journal, the doctor who created this drug Dr. Shinazi, said it only costs about $1,400 to manufacture the full 12-week treatment. That's less than 2% of the retail price.
So let's understand what's happening with Dr. Shinazi, because this is the most interesting part of the story. It's not like the Department of Veteran Affairs just happens to be charged this price, which, okay, they get a discount, but it's still an enormous amount, and some other doctor invented it. No, a doctor that works for the Department of Veteran Affairs invented the drug. Now, if you work at a company, they own it, right? But Dr. Shinazi said, no, I spent 7/8, this is literally what he said, 7/8 of my time at the Department of Veteran Affairs, and that's why they were right to pay me all the money that they paid me. But that 1/8 of the time, I worked on my own, and that's when I discovered this drug. That's pretty convenient, right? And then I sold that on the private market. You know how much he got? $400 million. $400 million. And now he says, they say, really? You invented the drug on 1/8 of your time? He's like, oh, I'm very efficient.
This is...
Okay, So, look, I want to be fair here, because Dr. Shinazi is the one who came up with the drug in the first place. It's a wonderful drug. It cures 99% of the patients. So I'm thrilled that whichever time he used it to come up with this drug. Okay, and he's the one that explains that it actually costs 2% of the money. But he already sold it off to another company. He sold it to a giant pharmaceutical company. His original company got $400 million, right? But he's not the one charging the money anymore. So I want to be fair about that too. But for him to say, oh no, I wasn't working at the Department of Veteran Affairs at the time. I was using 1/8 of my time at home. To say I'm skeptical about that is an understatement. And when they said, hey, listen, you work for these veterans, and now the veterans, only 15% of the veterans who have hepatitis C have gotten this treatment so far, because the department can't afford it, right? And he says, quote, I'm sorry you're taking it personally.
No, this is so ridiculous.
No, but wait a minute. If I got hepatitis and I'm a veteran, and by the way, a lot of them got it through their service, because of their service of what happened in Vietnam, okay? Because they'd get a blood transfusion in the field, okay, because they got injured, and then they get hepatitis. So, and then you say, I'm sorry you're taking it personally. Yeah, I'm taking it personally. I might die from this thing that I got while fighting for the United States of America. You work for the Department of Veteran Affairs, and then you made $400 million, and I can't get it because it's too expensive. Yeah, I'm taking it personally.
Yeah. So, part of the reason why healthcare costs so much in the United States is because there are no cost controls, right? Pharmaceutical companies get to charge whatever the hell they want. I mean, we're talking about Martin Shkreli, right? That clown who took the price of an anti-parasite drug from $11 a pill to $750 a pill. This is $1,000 a pill. $1,000 a pill. How do you, as a pharmaceutical company or a CEO of a pharmaceutical company, sleep at night knowing that there are 230,000 veterans in the United States right now that have hepatitis C, and the majority of them, vast majority of them, are going to die because of this disease because you're a greedy piece of shit? How do you sleep at night? And that's the thing, like, libertarians have that ridiculous argument about deregulating everything because that's the way it works. The free market will decide. Oh, you think that these amoral corporations and pharmaceutical companies are just going to do the right thing because the market's going to decide? They don't care. They don't care at all. I mean, the story drives me insane.
They have a monopoly on this drug. What market? Because in fact, they're the ones who created the monopoly in the first place. If you do a knockoff, they'll have the government come after you, right? So look, it's crony capitalism. You claim that you're against it, but in reality, the Republicans are the ones who set this up in the first place. And most libertarians support the Republican Party. So we hate crony capitalism. We don't want the government manipulating the market so that these guys have a monopoly. But if you said, hey, let's lift the patent and let generic drugs do the same thing, do it, they're like, no! You know who you would have? Number one enemy, the Republican Party. And if you don't realize that, you don't know a thing about politics.
Yep.
Okay? So look, I got mixed feelings about the doctor here. He did a great thing by inventing the medicine in the first place. I know he wants to get paid. I get that, right? But things that are clear are we have a perverse system that allows pharmaceutical companies to have absolute monopolies for, by the way, now extended periods of time. And oftentimes the government can't even negotiate with them. And we just let them charge whatever they want for things that are a matter of life and death. You want to talk about death panels? That's a death panel.
Yeah, where's Bill Riley? Where's Carly Fiorina? You know, all these people that are concerned about Planned Parenthood selling baby parts, which of course it doesn't. They're so worried about lives, right? These are the people that fought for our country. Where are they? How come they're not outraged about this story? Oh, that's right, because they're too busy fear-mongering about Muslims and about an organization that provides health care to hundreds of thousands of people throughout the country.
Yeah, and don't ever put support our troops ribbon or logo on your house or your car if you don't support the veterans who might die because the pharmaceutical companies were charging them too much money. So up and at them, do something about it, vote against it, right, and understand what's the reality on the ground in America. Otherwise, don't put the ribbon on there because you're just kidding yourself. You don't support them at all. All you want is more and more war. That's what you mean by the ribbon. You don't mean support the veterans who fight that war.
Okay, moving on to something a little lighter, but certainly interesting. El Chapo is a drug kingpin who escaped from a maximum security prison in Mexico earlier this year. But a new report indicates that that maximum security prison actually gave him some leeway when it comes to things like conjugal visits. This is an fascinating report. Apparently, conjugal visits are not illegal even in maximum security prisons in Mexico. However, understandably, there are very many limits on it. El Chapo didn't have to deal with those limits. In fact, he pretty much got to bone every week. Let me give you some proof. All right. So the maximum security prison. No, we do not have video on that. Now, the maximum security prison where Guzman, that's his real last name, was held is known for having high rates of conjugal visits. But even there, only about 20% of prisoners receive them at a rate of about once a month. The nearly 4 dozen conjugal visits Guzman racked up over the 16 months average out to 1 every 9 days. Okay, so almost 1 every week.
Yeah. No, but that's how we roll here in America, too. We just can't, for our drug gangs like Bloods, Crips, etc., they're like, how can we help you with conjugal visits? Man, the drug lords sometimes in these countries, unbelievable. They get to do. Hey, the guy built a giant tunnel under the prison.
They knew.
How did you not know that? Right?
They knew. They helped him escape. There's so much corruption in Mexico. They helped him escape. All you need to do is pay up enough money, and those prison guards will do whatever it takes to get you out of there. And I think that's what happened. Obviously, that's me being. What do you call it? Not skeptical.
But speculative.
Speculative, yeah.
So, speculation. George W. Bush.
Yeah.
Now, I want to read more here. They say that such visits, the conjugal visits, where they Schuppendas, are considered a privilege contingent upon good behavior. But Guzman received them even though security cameras record him discussing plans to escape to prison.
It's amazing! It's amazing!
So, well, there's 2 problems there. Number 1, that doesn't really seem like good behavior. Okay, number 2. You have him on tape telling you he's going to escape from prison, yet you let him do it anyway. Like, should we maybe stop the tunnel? I guess he burrowed down in a couple of different ways. Huh?
I just feel like those prison guards just felt a little bit of empathy for him. You know, they're like, us Latino men, we got that fight. Just kidding.
Pretty sure the empathy came in the form of cold hard cash.
Yes.
Right?
I'm just joking around.
Which then
but
led
they
to
do
other
go that
cold
far,
hard
you know.
things.
So anyway, it's an incredible story. 46 conjugal visits in total.
Well, look, to be fair to the Mexican government, he was doing hard time.
He was doing a lot of hard time. They just wanted to throw him a bone. Anyway, I want to give you more information. So under Mexican law, prisoners may designate a spouse or partner to solicit authorization for conjugal visits. The law only allows 1 person per inmate to receive such authorization, and the relationship between the inmate and the partner must have existed prior to imprisonment.
Yeah, I'm sure they paid close attention.
Yeah, but, there were other cartel, drug kingpins that have been housed in these prisons in the past. And there was one that was talked about in this report who, had his wife visit him, prostitutes visit him.
Really? Well, I didn't see that coming.
All sorts of people.
I didn't see that coming.
We're children.
They were wondering why Guzman cared so much about voting, all this talk of voting rights. It turns out he was actually looking forward to Erection Day.
Oh my God.
to joke about a guy that's killed this many people? Well, whether we were allowed or not, it just happened.
It just happened.
Okay, and then that happened. Okay, all right, we come back, more boner jokes. Okay, back in the terms, Lisa Pizza says nationalize the pharmaceutical industry. They're killing the goose that lays the golden eggs, and they have it coming. So I actually don't agree with that. I know I drive some of you crazy in my defense of capitalism, which I did again in old school last night, which when it's released you'll see it. But because I believe in capitalism doesn't mean that I believe in crony capitalism. And I really think there is a difference. Old school, ironically, Dave 36, says that is capitalism. I don't think so, right? The reason that the pharmaceutical companies are the number one industry that gives the most amount of money to politicians, more than the oil companies, more than the banks, more than defense companies, is because they're the ones who have the government give them monopolies.
Yep.
And extend their monopolies. They're monopolies for reasons that are somewhat understandable. It used to be 5 years because they spent a lot of money, theoretically, making the drug, and so they need some period of time to recoup that money. Now, in some cases, it's been extended to 12 years where they have a monopoly. And the monopoly's gotten extended to even the government, in the case of Medicare, can't negotiate with them on prices. That's the most insane thing I've ever heard. That's the definition of crony capitalism. So there is a difference. Doesn't mean you should socialize them, but we also shouldn't be insane in the giveaways that we're giving for them. Okay. Anyway, Starblazer writes in, I adore that Anna's just getting into the stoner mindset. Come with us, sister.
Just getting into the stoner mindset?
By the way, remember the handle was Starblazer. So, okay. And Snavilli writes in, I signed up with Wolfpack after Jenk shared the story about the soldiers supporting the cause. Everyone has been super nice. Oh, that's awesome. All right, great to see that. Look, it's a band of brothers and sisters. The person who won for us in California, State Leader Allison Harson, now leads Americans Take Action. Okay, and she was just a teacher in Orange County. Decided up and at 'em, I'm taking this on. You guys helped us hire her when we did a membership drive for that for Wolfpack, and these guys are all citizens just like me and you, showing you that it's doable. And then they have a great time. It's not easy, right? They're out there. They've got to work super hard for Americans to take action, getting 500,000 petitions signed in California before March. Super hard. But they're happy warriors. They're out there. They work together as a team. They bond, and they do something meaningful with their life. Can you imagine if you were one of the people who saved democracy? That'd be pretty badass, right? So for that, savedemocracy.org. If you're not in California, just wolf-pack.com. Join the cause in that way. Okay. All right. What's next, Anna?
All right. An artist by the name of Brother Nut has made a very strong statement against You're a child.
Okay. Dude, you name yourself Brother Nut, and what am I supposed to do? Not play bus nuts with him?
Brother Nut is a really funny name. Like, I think really dirty things when I hear that. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, he's a smart guy. He's trying to make a statement about Beijing's very severe pollution issue, and he did so by focusing on the medium that he's an expert in, art. So what he did is he actually used a huge vacuum in order to suck up some of the pollution, and then he created a brick out of it. All right. So for 100 days, Brother Nut dragged a roaring industrial-strength vacuum cleaner around the Chinese capital's landmarks, sucking up dust from the atmosphere. He has mixed the accumulated gray gunk with red clay to create a small but potent symbol of the city's air problems. Now, right now, the situation is terrible in Beijing because it's the winter months, and so the air is kind of stagnant, and it just kind of sits there. The pollution just kind of sits there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's miserable. People can't go outside. They're dealing with serious respiratory issues. And I love that he's trying to create a new, interesting way to help people visualize how bad the problem is. And, you know, we have these discussions about art quite a bit, Cenk, and you think art's stupid.
I don't think that. That's unfair. Stop misrepresenting me.
But you said it, and then you didn't say it, but then you said it.
You're regressive.
All right, I know that you think some art is great, and I think this is a perfect example of that. He's making a political statement through something that he's passionate about.
I wonder if it shows that you're a fundamentally dishonest person, that you would misrepresent me in that way.
How did he find himself in this story? Like,
okay, anyway. All right, listen. I don't want to bust this guy up. I don't want to bust the nut up.
You don't want to bust Brother Nut? Okay.
No, I don't. So, yeah, look, again, I can't help myself, and this is the part where you're right, about my natural instincts to be, I see the brother going out there with his vacuum cleaner, and he looks a little goofy, right?
You're terrible.
And he names himself Brother Nut, and, okay. Having said that, God bless your heart. No, of course. Look, I'm annoyed at art that doesn't make sense. It's very important not to generalize. Okay, you can't generalize about all art. Of course, there's art that I love that I have in my house, right? In this case, it's not meant to be pretty. It's not that you don't hang it in your house, right? It's meant to make a point, which is the best kind of art. And it does make a point, and it gets people to pay attention to, hey, maybe we should do something about this pollution. And it's not like in China they don't know how to handle pollution. When the Olympics were coming around, it's a communist government. They were like, okay, everybody stop polluting. Gone. Okay? They wiped out pollution in a matter of, I don't want to exaggerate, but I really believe that it was a matter of days. Okay? From what I remember of the story back then. And now, of course, it was draconian the way they did it. They're like, all the factories shut down. Okay, yeah, half the people that have cars, you're not allowed to drive them on days. The other half you can drive on even days, yada yada, right? So we can't take draconian action like that. They can, but I don't suggest it over the long term. But they have to start keeping in mind. Look, yes, economic advancement helps the Chinese people, but then on the other hand, pollution hurts the Chinese people. And I know they're a communist government. I know they're the people in power mainly interested about their own power rather than the citizens. But there are bounds of reason. And when you can start making bricks out of the pollution, I think you've crossed that line of bounds of reason. So, okay, let's put that up on a wall somewhere and now go forward and start fixing the problem.
Yes. You made a lot of really good points, but for some reason I couldn't stop focusing on your gestures. A lot of power. Power. Yes.
Stop attacking me! Why are you being so unfair to me?
All right.
You know what? Your problem is you couldn't understand the brilliant points I was making about art.
I know.
If you only could understand.
Well, the problem is that I used a straw man argument. I mean, I know I don't understand what a straw man argument is, but that kind of makes me seem like I'm intellectual, so I'm going to say that.
Yeah, look, all I know is...
False equivalency.
And you stole it! I was going to go with false equivalency. Okay, no Juice Strassman would do that. Let's move forward.
All right. Interview Magazine just featured Kylie Jenner on their cover. Now you must be wondering, why the hell is TYT talking about that? It's the most irrelevant news story of the day. Well, it's still pretty unimportant unless you consider the fact that she's using a wheelchair as a prop. And the disabled community didn't necessarily take too kindly to the fact that she did that. Now, Kylie Jenner, I mean, she's the new Kim Kardashian,
She
right?
is. That's it. It's over. I'm declaring it.
It's disastrous.
Kylie Jenner has just replaced Kim Kardashian. And I don't know if Kim is pissed about that. I don't know what their family relationship is. I'm pretty sure they'll do a reality show centered around it. But now everything Kylie does is like national news, and it's working. You know, she has this line of lip gloss or whatever it is.
She got lip injections, and then, all these girls on Instagram like, oh my god, have you guys, seen Kylie Jenner's lips? They're like, amazing. I know they're not real, but if I just buy this lip gloss, it's like $29. Maybe my lips will look like that too.
They sold out in under an hour. I think they might have sold out in 1 minute online.
Yeah.
Okay, I know a lot of that is marketing, etc., but, it's working. It's working. So she'll do this stupid PR stunt. Disabled people are understandably pissed about it, right? Now, look, you could argue that she should be allowed to. I mean, of course, everybody knows she's allowed to do it, right? And some might argue that that's no big deal, right?
Yeah.
But if you're disabled, you might be kind of annoyed that this person who's incredibly powerful and a celebrity and incredibly wealthy is using stuff that is such a huge part of your life and that limits you so much as kind of a gag, a marketing tool.
Yeah, and look, I don't think wheelchairs limit people. I mean, I think their disability does, but wheelchairs give them the freedom to be mobile, to do what they need to do, right? I just feel like it's ridiculous to use a wheelchair, something that so many people depend on, as a prop, as if it's part of your haute couture, right? Like, you're a clown, okay? Kylie Jenner is a clown. And I know why this was done by Interview Magazine, or the clowns behind Interview Magazine. They want the attention, so congratulations, you got your attention. But in the process of getting the attention that you wanted, you're kind of insulting people who rely on wheelchairs. It's not a prop, it's not fashion, this is not chic, this is insulting. Now, am I going to ban people from doing something like this? No, but you can't be upset at people who are offended by it. This isn't cute. There's nothing cute about it. Anyway, here are some statements on Twitter. One person says, as someone in a wheelchair, Kylie Jenner, Interview Magazine, this is offensive. My chair is not haute couture. Another person says, wow, being in a wheelchair is so fun and fashionable. Ableism is the ultimate fashion statement. Another person says, good job modeling in a wheelchair, even though you don't have the first idea of what it's like to be paralyzed or like being paralyzed.
So, but again, this goes to the Kardashian-Jenner family's number one trait, which is shamelessness. She didn't do the wheelchair shoot despite the fact that it would be offensive. She did it because it was offensive.
Yes.
She knew that would get more attention, which is exactly what's happening now. And in America, even negative attention doesn't hurt you. Look at Donald Trump, look at Kim Kardashian, her sister, right? Look at Paris Hilton. They all started with porn tapes, and so now she thinks, oh, that's a good role model for me. And here, I don't even have to do porn. I just kind of spit in the eye of disabled people. And my lip gloss sells out even quicker. Welcome to America.
But the question is her lip gloss popping?
So, I mean, look, that's you want to make money in America, get rid of your shame, and you'll be in much better shape.
Yeah, to make a serious point, we reward bad behavior. Mm-hmm. America loves bad behavior. And look, this is a kind of a frivolous, ridiculous example of it, but think about George Zimmerman and all the crazy things that he's done and how many times he's been rewarded for it. Murdered an unarmed black kid, rewarded for it. He has his defenders. Posted Trayvon Martin's dead body on Twitter, got rewarded for it. Twitter didn't do anything about it. People applauded him for it.
He raises money off of it.
He raises money off stuff like that. We reward bad behavior constantly, and it's sickening. I don't know. We're in a bad state right now.
Jared Jackson, go.
Did we point out, maybe I missed it, she looks like a sex doll? Like, it looks like a what is it called? Like a mannequin, but then, it has this whole thing, or she's in, this shiny pleather stuff. So it's even sexualizing that, now everything is triggered off of the sexualization of this girl. I mean, she's an adult, but like, and I don't know if that adds to the anger people would have. Like, people, we see people in wheelchairs, we don't think how sexy is that. We think, like, people are disgusted by some disabled people, and that's just the way a lot of society is. And the way, I don't know if she's looking to say, I'm trying to change that perception of the disabled community. I mean, anything that people pose for, it has to look like she's about to have sex.
Yeah. By the way, in terms of like the whole sexualizing and whatever, I mean, the second she turned 18, they like started doing all sorts of things with her. In the same photo shoot, I mean, they were sexualizing her before she was 18. But in this same photo shoot, there's like a picture of her in assless chaps. She don't give a fuck.
Right. Which was,
She's a child.
I'm just kidding around. Anyway, real quick, JR, they do mean for it to be sexual. Excuse me, that was fun. She is supposed to look like a mannequin. That is part of the point. And so, yeah, people are not digging that part of it either. But like, she's the new and improved Kim Kardashian because she's so young.
Yeah,
that's why she has the same shameless gene that Kim does, right? But she's like, she was not prepubescent. That's not fair. But like, they start taking pictures of her making it public when she was 14. Okay. And they're like, here's Kylie's 14-year-old ass, and then here's her 15-year-old breasts. I mean, it was all over the internet. And now that she's 18, they're like, someone open the floodgates. And then here comes like Kylie propaganda and etc. This commercialization makes me sick. Nice Monster headphones though, Jim.
It's Monster wireless soundstage, not the headphones. They're wireless.
The soundstage.
I'll plug that out. Yeah, it'll fill your house with great sound.
Very good. Next thing you know, we're gonna. I'm gonna leave it alone. Okay, all right. Let's keep going.
All right. Arkansas continues to deny same-sex married couples the right to put their names on their own children's birth certificates. Now, this is an issue because a judge has already ruled that 3 plaintiffs can have their names on their children's birth certificates. However, the way the ruling was read makes it seem as though it only applies to those who are in the case. Now, today's decision affords the plaintiffs as same-sex couples the same constitutional rights with respect to the issuance of birth certificates and amended birth certificates as opposite-sex couples. That's what the judge said. Here's the questionable part. That is the sum total of the legal effect of this decision. So I don't know if that's the part that's being interpreted as this only applies to the plaintiffs, but it doesn't matter. Arkansas has decided that if you are a same-sex couple, you are not allowed to have both partners' names on that birth certificate. It's disgusting.
It says in the Constitution, and these guys who are usually obsessed about the Constitution, Second Amendment. Well, there's one before that. It's called the First Amendment, and it says that we shall not establish a religion. There is no rational argument for discriminating against same-sex couples. So all the studies that you thought you had, then the kids wind up worse off. No, that's not true. They did studies. Some studies they're slightly better off, probably because of the income situation, etc. Not because gay people are better. That's ridiculous, right? But overall, pretty much equal, right? And there are no studies that say that they're worse off. So the only reason to do it is my religion. My religion says that they're sinners. So I don't think the sinners should have the same rights as them. But that's interesting. Then you should go and establish a state that is guided by your particular religion or your interpretation of religion. Because this doesn't apply to all Christians. It applies to the fundamentalists who are opposed to that. So go start the Southern Baptist state. I know you tried that before. Didn't work out well for you. But go to the Vatican. Live there. Go to Iran. Live under Sharia law. You might love it.
Just flip things around for a second and put yourself in these people's shoes, right? You, as a father, not being able to have your name on your own child's birth certificate. Can you imagine? Like, think about how passionately people feel about their own children. I mean, I don't know what I would do, but I don't know if I would be able to remain calm.
And they say to you, you're not legitimate enough. That's in essence what they're saying, right?
Oh my God.
You're not legitimate enough to have your child call you mom. Okay? And so it's not legal. It's not, because you know why? I don't like your lifestyle. I don't like who you love. And what do I base that on? A 2,000-year-old book. And it's not your book, it's my book, but I'm going to force it down your throat. Okay.
In a country that's supposed to value a separation of church and state. It's
and in a country that tells us that they think that Sharia law is the worst thing on earth. Well, what is this? This is Christian Sharia law. It's exactly what it is. Get your religion out of my government. Okay? You want to practice fundamentalist whatever, Hinduism, Christianity, Islam in your own house, or pray 5 times a day. You want to go around the house yelling, I hate gay people, or, oh, I don't hate them, but I hate them. Oh, I don't want to give them the same rights, but go, do whatever you want in your house. It's a free country, right? But you don't get to impose those laws on us. That is the equivalent of Sharia law.
Are we done?
You tell me, man. You're in charge of that. What do I know?
I'm not crazy about the last story.
No, let's do it.
You like it?
I find it interesting, slightly interesting.
All right.
We Young Turks, we bring you slightly interesting news stories.
All right. I guess I just all right.
No, all right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Two Ivy League schools have decided to do away with the word master in administrative titles. Those schools include Harvard and Princeton University. And the reason why they're doing that is because, I don't know, the word master has a negative connotation when it comes to the slave trade that we experienced here in the United States. So let me give you some more details as to why they've done this. Princeton will actually change its name, or its current title of master of the residential college to head of college, which seems like it makes a lot of sense. And
Although that sounds funny too.
I know. And Harvard is launching a process to rename the title. Now here's a perfect quote that kind of summarizes why this decision is being made. When a black student is asked to address an authority figure as master, and especially when serving that person, as students do in their capacity as master aides, the association can be disempowering.
Master aides sounds funny to me too. Okay. All right. Anyway, and they have to call him, and the whole thing is super goofy. Like, like Master Johnson. I knew a guy named, his last name was Bates, so he would be Master Bates. Okay. I'm not kidding. Master Bates, how can I serve you? On that alone, they should get rid of the title. Okay. Now, I think it's a fair and interesting question. Is it too sensitive, or hey, let's get with the times here? There's no need for it. Let's just change the title. It's not a big deal. Master Jackson, what do you say? If Master anything sounds funny, let alone offensive. But anyway, yes, go ahead.
Sure. I mean, the thing is, anytime it's a problem for the side that has the title or whatever is getting changed, just ask if it's hurting them. What is it changing for them?
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah, if you can be upset all you want and say, oh, they're being too sensitive, oh, let's suck it up, it's not actually doing anything. What is it doing for you if it changes? Nothing. You just get to be called head.
Yeah. It's a terrific point. It's almost dispositive. We're almost moving on, okay? Let's just button it up. Look, if a black person feels uncomfortable calling you master, come on, you can understand that, right? It doesn't take a stretch to understand that. It feels uncomfortable because of the other way that it was used. Now, everybody knows that Princeton doesn't mean it that way today. Harvard doesn't mean it that way today. But one great way to show that they don't mean it that way is to make a change that causes no problems at all.
None.
Right? So now it's called head of college. So what? Who got hurt by the change? Nobody got hurt by the change. And some people didn't like it the old way. Problem solved.
Agreed.
Okay, there you go. We're unanimous. Make it so. Nice job, Master Kasparian.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Head Kasparian. That doesn't sound any better.
No.
I don't know. Do they now have to call them head baits? I don't know. Okay.
Head baits.
The whole thing is goofy, if you ask me.
Yep.
Okay. All right, we're done.
We're done.
All right. Fun post game, full of goofiness for you guys. When we return for the members, tytnetwork.com/subscribe. Bye bye.